Electronic arts. Man, if there was ever two words that makes a vast majority of gamers just uncontrollably vomit a little bit in their mouth, it would be those. But, that said, they actually had a couple cool things at this year's show. For instance, Mass Effect Andromeda. And again, this is one of those things that we just know it exists. It's probably going to play a lot like the first three Mass Effects if you had to take a wild guess, but we know very little about what the new setting is going to be, what the new story is going to be. We know it takes place after those three games. I mean, I would hope at this point. We're not going to go backwards and see Shepard's experiences in the Blitz or whatever, if you happen to choose that backstory. And it's interesting I bring that up, actually, because I am playing through the original three Mass Effects. I almost ended that sentence with again, but I'm only playing one of them again, which is the original. That's the only one I beat. Now I've got the Mass Effect Collection, which is all three games on the PS3, so yeah, I'm trying to work my way through that right now. I'm trying to basically build myself up for that. I'm doing what I want to do with Dishonored, is just finally complete my love for this series and get myself ready for where the industry's going in the future. So, if anything else, I at least have, by the time this game, I have plenty of things to do while I wait for the next game to come out, so. But the reason I bring that up too is because it reminds me of why I like these games, why it's all the little details. Like, I'm reminded of the subtle design things that BioWare knew even back then, even before Mass Effect became just the juggernaut, the behemoth it was, because they didn't launch that game knowing it was going to become a multi-million sale blockbuster franchise. Like, they had you never launch a game knowing that it's going to take off like that series did. But even back then, they had all of these little things, like, you can choose to level up your squad, or you can just set the game like, nah, Shepard's all I need. I'm good on that front. You can set aim assist if you can't be bothered to make every shot count. You just want to point in the general direction of the enemy and shoot, which helps a lot if you're playing Vanguard, by the way, and you just have that dinky little pistol at the beginning. But knowing that BioWare is kind of the king of RPGs, almost. They've got some serious competition with Bethesda now, and some would still argue Square Enix at this point, but every game they make, I know, is going to be, mechanically at least, incrementally better than the last. They've learned things, and they're willing to go forward, and I feel like they have a lot more freedom with Andromeda, that game, the fourth one. Because they're out of that trilogy now. They have free reign to take the story and the setting and what the overall themes of this one are going to be to wherever they want to take it, because they've got a blank slate now. I mean, it's still Shepard, obviously, but whatever these guys bring forward in the future, I want to see it. I want to play it. I want to experience it. Definitely. Need for Speed's another one of those. And we got gameplay, and I think there's a reason for that, because in a large part, all of these games are very, very similar to each other. But the fact that they're just calling it Need for Speed, which, didn't we have another game that was just called Need for Speed a while back? I don't even know. There's been so many of them at this point. And I haven't been keeping track of the franchise either. Like, I jump in from time to time. It's kind of the way most people who like Madden games treat those. It's like, every couple years I'll get the next update. I sort of feel the same way like that for Need for Speed. But this sort of, both thematically and titularly, or titularly, however you pronounce it, the title of the game, the theme that is going for is it's sort of just bringing everything back to basics, like taking the things everybody loves, all of these modes that were really fun in all of those games, and sort of creating almost like a best of hits compilation of Need for Speed modes. Like, there's Hot Pursuit, you can play as the police or the outlaw, you can just straight up race people, you can go online and just have a grand old time. And if that is what it is, and we can avoid the typical Electronic Arts nonsense that they like to cram into all of their games these days, I think that one will actually be worth watching in the future. Knights of the Fallen Empire. I'm in an even more iffy position about this one than I am with Elder Scrolls Online, because I will not play Star Wars The Old Republic just out of principle. Like, it only claims to be a free-to-play game, okay? Did you know you can't even claim legendary weapons? You cannot get purple gear in that game unless you pay for premium. That's how insulting this thing is. That's how stupid this game thinks you are. It's like, hey, thanks for putting it up all that time to get to this point in the game. I hope you had fun. Sorry, you've got a power cap. You're never gonna live up to the level of all these other people who have put in just as much effort, heart, and soul into the experience as you did, because you can't fork us over some cash because we lied to you. God, what the... I'm trying not to curse in this video, and I can't come up with a single word that, other than a four-lettered one, that expresses my frustration towards that game. I mean, if you're into... I hate to keep giving this answer, but if you're into it, you're gonna love this, because apparently it's coming free to all of their premium members. I guess everyone else has to pay for it, as always. And somehow that game has still managed to eke out an existence for itself, probably because it's Star Wars and it didn't take a massive nosedive like Star Wars Galaxies did. It hasn't screwed up that badly. It's bad, and it's not that. To their credit, they're greedy bastards, but they're smart greedy bastards, I'll put it that way. I guess I should actually talk about the content itself then, though, shouldn't I? Well, it's more modes, more characters, new classes. Hell, it's pretty much everything you want out of an MMO. It's also a lot of things that Elsword has been giving me for free for years now, but at the same time, this is what I was talking about earlier, is the idea that they're introducing more player-driven content. Like, they said it themselves, that is the number one thing they've said that fans want. It's the one thing they've been most vocal about, and it makes sense, because BioWare fans are used to having a very personalized experience, a game where everything sort of centers around the main character. You drive things forward. Your actions by yourself feel important, like they have an impact and weight on the world around you, and they're delivering it. So, yeah, you know what, I said it earlier, there's no point being angry about this type of thing. Yeah, if you like that game, I'm happy for you. I'm glad you're finally getting what you want, and I'm glad BioWare's doing what they are good at. They're doing what they do in this game now, which is just, it can only be good for everybody involved. Hey kids, did you think Elder Scrolls ripping off Hearthstone wasn't enough? Well, here comes Star Wars battle cards. How many collectible card games do you expect me to buy at this point? I don't have that much time these days. Like, I gotta choose just one or another, and similar to my situation with MMOs, it's gonna take a substantial effort to convince me to get off of Hearthstone right now. I think everybody's just got that uphill battle. Somebody's already it's the MOBA situation. No, like, DC Infinite Crisis had to go down not too long ago. Like, you'd think if anybody had a cast of characters eclectic and wacky enough to support an MMO and create not an MMO, a MOBA, sorry, bad language, bad English, bad brain, bad mouth, keep up with the brain, that could support a game that would work and be able to sustain itself, it would be Marvel. It would be the guys who have one of the most recognizable set of characters in the world, but it just flopped. They just couldn't support the game anymore, which sucks. I was actually going to try and get into that not too long ago. It just launched on Steam like, I don't know, a month or two back? And they're already offering people refunds if they bought the starter pack through those guys. It's a shame. But I think that's the situation that these high-quality collectible card games are facing right now. Is somebody's already there. Just the way, like, League of Legends and Smite and Dota have already stormed the MOBA market. It's gonna be pretty hard to topple Hearthstone, to compete with them, to have that X factor that sets them apart from that juggernaut and lets them carve out their own niche in the market. Because you're not gonna topple these guys. It's the same argument that everybody makes whenever they say, this is the WoW killer. No, it's not. You knew that before you said it. It's not. So, I will say though, if there's anyone that can go up against Hearthstone, it is Star Wars. That is... And I know I just said that you'd think a franchise as big as something like Marvel or Star Wars would be able to take down a juggernaut, and they failed already, but hey, fingers crossed, it can always happen, right? I'll tell you what, you know what's something I would never have expected in a million years to come out of an EA conference? One of my favorite games of E3, one of my favorite trailers of E3, which was Unravel. And I loved the guy who came up to stage. God, I wish I could remember his name off the top of my head. Because like Todd Howard from Bethesda, he seemed like the most human on that stage. He wasn't some businessman there to, I know this is really hippie indie speak that I'm throwing out there, but he felt real. He felt genuine. Like, you could see his hands trembling as he was showing off to the world. And to be fair to the guy, if I was a small indie developer, which I technically am right now, but I'm not standing on the stage in front of the entire freaking world trying to convince the entire internet that this passion project I've had going for a couple years is worth their time and attention, and wouldn't you believe it, it was. Unravel is one of the cutest games to come out of E3 this year. I love the themes, the concepts, the way he was describing where the idea came from, all of the heart behind it. This is something I want to experience. If I could only buy a handful of games, like, Unravel's up there. Top 5 easily out of my favorite games from the show this year. Bar none, hands down. I want to play that now. Like, I wanted to be there specifically so I could get my hands on Unravel if I could. So, yeah, big thumbs up on that end. Gonna play that as soon as I possibly can. Get some gameplay videos for you over on the gameplay channel. Selfless promotion, selfless promotion. Sports! And Pele, don't forget him. I'm stunned. I'm not even gonna pretend I have anything to say about this segment. And again, I'm sure I would have been a lot more excited for it if I could actually understand what the dude was saying. Like, I don't mean to be disrespectful at all. I know who Pele is. I know what he means to people who love this sport religiously. And I know there are sports nerds out there who are probably sharpening their pitchforks right now because they just realize I'm one of those guys who does not care about sports games whatsoever. But that's the interesting thing about this. He didn't even talk about the games. Like, not our games. Not like the games that were being shown here. He talked about the beautiful game. Like, soccer itself. Which is... It felt like one of those stereotypical awkward situations you think of when you think of, like, the Spike VGAs. They just bring this celebrity on there that doesn't even want to be there, and just have them spout nonsense for 5 minutes. It feels awkward. It feels disingenuine. It wastes everybody's time. I'm sorry. It just does. It did. There was no purpose to that segment whatsoever. And I don't know if a lot of you caught that, but when the guy on stage who was talking to Pele, when that interview ended, he looked at the camera like even he knew that it was a bad interview. That guy's probably going to lose his job for making that face, but I think everybody was self-aware enough to know that that had no place in the conference. They would have been a lot better off just bringing a developer up there, somebody who actually knew about it. Oh, and does anyone... I need to know, speaking of people who came clean out of nowhere, I need to know, does anyone on the planet, anywhere, other than at EA apparently, know who this Hoop God guy is? I googled him. I cannot find him. He's like Funny Mouth. He has absolutely no contact. You Google him and just nothing comes up. So, fill me in on that one. Who was that guy and why should I care? I don't know. Like I said, I don't have an affinity for these types of games, and nothing I saw this year helped. Like, it's a cool feature that I can scan myself in and I can play as myself in NBA. If a friend had that, I'd screw around with that for an afternoon or so, but yeah, you're not making a convert out of me here. Not seeing a single thing that ever will, to be honest with you. And then there were two, and I gotta say, they saved two of what they probably thought were their best for last. If they saved their absolute best for last, this would have been Unravel in Star Wars Battlefront. But we got something almost as good, which is Mirror's Edge Catalyst. And I actually have played the original Mirror's Edge. I loved the concepts of that game. I loved the ideas of it. It did a lot of things really, really well. The free running. And they actually lived up to their promise. You hear a lot of companies say, well, you could get through the whole game without firing a single bullet, but it requires a substantial amount of effort on your end, and it feels like something maybe you might not even think is worth trying to do because you have to go so far out of your way to make it happen. In Mirror's Edge, they found a way to have that make sense. Like, it actually felt viable to get through the entire game without killing anybody, which is actually the way I played that game, because it felt like something I wanted to do. It felt like it's a world where something like that actually made sense. And now they're introducing the idea that the levels aren't linear anymore. It's not about getting from point A to point B. From what I understand what they're talking about, this is a more open world now. This is them giving you free reign to go wherever you want and do whatever you want in whatever order and sort of free roam around this world, slowly uncovering all of the nooks and crannies within it, slowly building, exploring it in your own way, which you can. There are so many different ways to look around it, to look up, down, diagonal, squagonal, interdimensional, if I may steal from JonTron for a second, and see what you're going to do in the future. So, color me interested, or color me red, like the rest of the interactables in that world do, because I'm climbing over poles to try and get my hands on this one. And then their big one. The one that is going to make everybody remember EA, for better or worse. Star Wars Battlefront. That Hoth scene. From what I've heard from my little birdies on the floor, apparently it looks a lot cooler on that screen than it is in some situations. Like, the flying game is terrible right now. It's absolutely bollocks. Like, the way they're describing it to me, it is no fun to be in the air, whether you're using a jetpack or a Y-wing or whatever you're flying. Taking down the AT-AT, if you slow down that trailer a little bit, you start to understand, first you have to successfully do a bombing run on that thing, which weakens it, makes it vulnerable. Then you have to successfully do a QTE when you get in there, and you just kind of have to watch it happen as the guy goes around and does this. And that said, when you get past that, when you look at the actual run and gun gameplay, the thing you'll be doing 90% of the time, it's a lot of fun. Actually, it looks a lot of fun too. And again, I'm not really big on these types of games typically, but I was intrigued by the kinds of ideas that were introduced by Titanfall. The idea that you get points, not necessarily for taking out other players, but there are other units as well. There are other people there that aren't as tough to take down, that you can still feel like you're making something resembling progress. And these maps are big. There are so many little things to do, like establishing those comm uplinks that allows the ships to come in and start to wreak some real havoc on the AT-ATs. They can actually pull off that sequence that is. The AT-ATs, by the way, if you're driving one of those, it's on rails. Like, it just knows where it wants to go. You just kind of point the gun where you want things to die, pretty much. I want to give it a try. I want to at least try this game. if I get a feel for it and it feels good, which a lot of people say it does feel really, really good, then yeah, it was worth getting excited over. It feels like, because again, this was one of those franchises I did not experience. It's one of those things I have no previous bias about, but now that I get what it's all about, I want to know more. I want to see more. I want to experience more. I want to play as Luke fighting Vader in the middle of Hoth for no reason whatsoever, other than the fact that it's a fun thing to do in multiplayer. I love when companies take creative freedoms to do things like that, to just make something awesome happen because it's awesome. So what do I think of EA overall for this year? It's a smaller conference than something like Microsoft or Sony. I guess that's to be expected. It's kind of an obvious position. In fact, I think they have the exact same number of bullet points on my list that Bethesda does. But at the same time, again, they had some really good stuff. Like I said, Mirror's Edge is worth being excited over. Star Wars Battlefront, for now, is worth being excited over. Unravel, especially. Dude, like I said, I want to play that this moment. If I could be playing that this moment, I wouldn't be here recording this right now. But there's something about that whole conference. It wasn't as fun to watch as something like Bethesda. And I think I understand why. Bethesda, it was their first show. And if guys like Todd Howard are any indication, those guys had full control over everything. They're not quite there yet. They're not this cynical company that's... I definitely get the feeling that those guys are in it for the right reasons. The way they describe their games, the way they roll out their games, the way they show off their games, I know what it is. Bethesda had more gameplay. They don't try to spin doctor or anything. They just show you how the game works. With the exception of Elder Scrolls Legends, I think we saw every single game they're announcing this year in motion, in a great capacity. We saw a lot of gameplay for Doom 4. We saw a lot of gameplay for Fallout 4. We saw a lot of pretty much how everything is going to be played. And at the end of the day, that's what we're here for. That's what we're excited about. Because even if we can't play it ourselves, watching someone else play it, if you're familiar with the concept of Let's Plays or something like what Markiplier does, that's the next best thing. It's not, you're getting only half the experience because the interactive part of it is taken out, but there was so much more to get excited about because we actually saw the games in motion. And to be fair, EA didn't do none of that. Like, they ended it off in the best way they could, which was the game people seem to be the most excited about, that already had a lot of excitement behind it, that had a big name behind it, like Star Wars, and they also showed off a ton of gameplay for that. It looked kind of scripted, like they went through about 50 different takes, and that was the best one they had from different camera angles, but it was still a lot of fun. And so far in our pantheon, Bethesda's the best conference. Microsoft is below them. Oh, that's a tough call. Actually, all things considered, yeah, I would put EA just below Microsoft right now. So that's how my tier list is working out right now. But that might change here in a little bit because they're currently at the bottom, but that might change because now we get to talk about the guys who made Assassin's Creed Unity, so we'll see how that goes.